The stars had watched the Valanthi Empire grow for 3,000 years. From a single world, they had spread across hundreds of planets. Their silver skin shone like polished metal under any light, their bodies stood nearly 8 feet tall, and their strength could crush stone with bare hands. Every species in the Orion sector knew their name and feared it. The Valanthi did not ask for respect. They took it, so when the small human ship appeared at the edge of Valara Prime, the capital world of the Empire, many wondered why these strange creatures had come. Humans were new to the galaxy. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. They were small, weak, and lived such short lives that the Valanthi considered them barely more than children playing at being a real civilization. Princess Serana stood at the tall windows of the Imperial Palace and watched the human vessel descend through the clouds. She was the youngest daughter of Empress Kalindra, and at only 120 years old, she was still considered young by her people. Her silver hair fell past her shoulders, and her violet eyes held the sharp intelligence of royal blood. But those eyes also held something else: pride. The kind of pride that came from never knowing defeat or hardship. "Look at that tiny ship," she said to her handmaiden, Vessa. "It looks like a toy. Do they really think they can impress us with that?" Vessa smiled nervously. She knew better than to disagree with the princess. The human delegation arrived at the palace gates 2 hours later. There were 12 of them in total. Their leader was a woman named Ambassador Patricia Holloway. She had brown hair turning gray at the edges and walked with the careful steps of someone who knew she was being watched. Behind her came advisors, translators, and security personnel, and at the very back of the group stood a man who caught no one's attention at all. His name was Daniel Carter. He was 43 years old, though he looked older. His face carried lines from years of sun and wind and war. His hair was cut short and had gone mostly gray. He wore a simple military uniform with no medals or ribbons, though the fabric showed signs of careful repair in several places. His eyes were the color of storm clouds, and they moved slowly across the grand hall, taking in every detail without showing any emotion. He was a sergeant, nothing more. He had come as part of the security team because the military had ordered him to come. He had not asked to be here, and he expected nothing from this mission except another stamp on his service record. The grand hall of the Imperial Palace was designed to make visitors feel small. The ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. The pillars were carved from single pieces of crystal that had taken 1,000 years to grow. The floor was polished stone that reflected light, like still water. Princess Serana descended the main staircase with her entourage behind her. Her mother, the Empress, would not meet with the humans until the formal ceremony the next day. Until then, Serana had been given the duty of greeting them. She considered it an insult to her status, but she would use the opportunity to remind these humans of their proper place. "Welcome to Valara Prime," she said, her voice echoing through the hall. She did not bow. She barely even nodded. "I am Princess Serana of the Imperial House. You will be shown to your quarters." Ambassador Holloway stepped forward and offered a respectful bow. "Thank you, Your Highness. We are honored to be here. The people of Earth hope that this visit will mark the beginning of a lasting friendship between our species." Serana's lips curled into something that was almost a smile but not quite. "Friendship," she repeated, as if tasting a strange food. "Yes. We shall see what your people have to offer." She turned to walk away, but something made her stop. Her eyes had fallen on Daniel Carter. He stood apart from the others, and unlike them, he was not looking at her. He was looking at the crystal pillars with what might have been appreciation, or might have been simple curiosity. "You there," she called out. "Soldier. What is your name?" Daniel turned to face her. He did not seem surprised or nervous. He simply looked at her the way one might look at a mountain or a storm. Something large and powerful. Yes. But nothing that required fear. "Daniel Carter, Your Highness," he said. His voice was quiet but clear. "And what do you think of our palace, Daniel Carter?" He considered the question for a moment. "It is very beautiful," he said. "The people who built it must have cared very much about their work." Serana had expected flattery or fear. This simple, honest answer confused her for a moment. Then she decided it was stupidity. "Our ancestors built this palace over 600 years," she said. "Your entire civilization has not existed that long." "No, Your Highness," Daniel agreed. "It has not." His easy agreement annoyed her more than argument would have. She wanted to see him react. She wanted to see fear or anger or something that would prove humans were as primitive as she believed. "Tell me, soldier," she said, stepping closer to him. She was nearly 2 feet taller than him, and she used her height to cast a shadow over his face. "Do you truly believe your little species has anything to offer the Valanthy Empire? We have conquered worlds. We have built wonders that will outlast your sun. What could humans possibly give us?" Daniel looked up at her. His gray eyes showed no fear and no anger. They showed only a quiet patience, like a man who had seen too much to be bothered by words. "I do not know what humanity can offer your empire, Your Highness," he said. "I am only a soldier. I go where I am sent, and do what I am ordered. Those questions are above my rank." Serana laughed. The sound was bright and sharp and cruel. Her courtiers joined in, filling the hall with mocking noise. "A soldier who does not think," she said. "How perfectly human. You are like trained animals, following orders without understanding why." Daniel said nothing. He simply waited until the laughter died down. "You may go to your quarters now," Serana said, waving her hand as if brushing away an insect. "Try not to break anything. Human hands are so clumsy." She turned and walked away, her entourage following behind her like the tail of a comet. She did not look back. She had already forgotten the quiet soldier with the gray eyes. But Daniel Carter watched her go. And somewhere behind his calm expression, he was thinking thoughts that no Valanthy could have guessed. He had seen princesses before. He had seen emperors and kings and warlords. He had seen the powerful mock the weak and the strong trample the small. He had learned long ago that such people often learned hard lessons when the universe decided to teach them. He wondered what lesson was waiting for Princess Serana. He hoped, for her sake, that it would not be too painful. The days that followed were difficult for the human delegation. The Valanthy did not make things easy for their guests. The food was too spicy for human stomachs. The beds were too hard and too large. The air was kept at a temperature that made humans shiver, while Valanthy found it perfectly comfortable. But these were small problems compared to Princess Serana. She had decided that the humans would be her entertainment during their stay. Every day, she found new ways to remind them of their weakness. She organized games and contests that she knew humans could not win. She asked questions designed to make them look foolish. She laughed at their customs and mocked their history. On the third day, she arranged a demonstration of Valanthy's strength. In the palace courtyard, warriors lifted stones that weighed more than a human transport vehicle. They bent metal bars with their bare hands. They performed feats that would have taken human machines to match. "Your turn," Serana said to the human delegation with a sweet smile. "Surely your soldiers can show us something impressive." Ambassador Holloway tried to politely decline, but Serana would not allow it. She insisted that at least one human attempt to lift the smallest stone. It weighed only 300 pounds. A Valanthy child could lift it. The human security team looked at each other with uncertainty. None of them wanted to embarrass themselves in front of the watching crowd of Valanthy nobles. Then Daniel Carter stepped forward. "I will try," he said simply. Serana clapped her hands with delight. The quiet soldier volunteers. How brave. Or how foolish. Daniel walked to the stone and studied it for a moment. He bent his knees, gripped the rough surface, and pulled with all his strength. The stone shifted slightly, but did not rise more than an inch off the ground. His face turned red with effort. His arms shook. After 10 seconds, he let go and stepped back. The courtyard filled with laughter. Valanthy nobles pointed and made jokes in their own language. Even the servants could not hide their smiles. "A wonderful effort," Serana said, her voice dripping with false kindness. "You almost moved it. Perhaps in another 1,000 years of evolution, your species will manage to actually lift things." Daniel wiped the dust from his hands. Perhaps, he said. His voice showed no shame or anger. This bothered Sarana more than she wanted to admit. She wanted to see him upset. She wanted to see the proud human military broken by simple physical truth. Instead, this strange man simply accepted his failure and moved on. "Does nothing bother you?" she asked, stepping closer to him. "Do you not feel shame when you fail?" Daniel looked at her with those calm gray eyes. "I feel many things, Your Highness. But I have learned that strength comes in many forms. The stone did not move today. That does not mean I have nothing to offer." Sarana shook her head. "What could you possibly offer? You cannot fight. You cannot build. Your bodies are weak, and your lives are short. You are born, you struggle for a few brief decades, and then you die. What is the point of such an existence?" For the first time, something flickered in Daniel's eyes. Not anger, but something deeper. Something that looked almost like sadness. "The point," he said quietly, "is what we choose to do with those few decades. It is not the length of a life that matters, Your Highness. It is what we fill it with." Sarana stared at him for a long moment. Then she laughed again. But this time, the laughter sounded forced. "Philosophy from a soldier," she said. "How amusing. Go back to your quarters, human. I am bored with you." That night, Sarana hosted a formal dinner for the delegation. The long table was covered with foods from a dozen worlds. Musicians played soft melodies in the corner. Everything was designed to show the wealth and power of the Valanthy Empire. Sarana placed herself at the head of the table and made sure Daniel Carter was seated nearby. She had not finished with him yet. "Tell me about Earth," she said between courses. "I have heard it is a small world, blue and green, with large amounts of water. Is that true?" Ambassador Holloway began to answer, but Sarana held up her hand. "I was asking the soldier." Daniel set down his eating utensils. "Yes, Your Highness. Earth is mostly covered by oceans. Our continents are small compared to many worlds. We have mountains and deserts, and forests, and ice. It is not a large planet, but it is our home." "And you fight wars there," Sarana said. "Against each other. Your own species." "We have, yes, for most of our history." "How primitive." Sarana took a sip of wine. "The Valanthy stopped fighting among ourselves 5,000 years ago. We learned that unity made us strong. You humans still kill each other over land and resources and ideas. Does that not prove that you are less evolved than us?" Daniel was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "We have made many mistakes," he admitted. "We have done terrible things to each other. But we have also learned from those mistakes. Each generation tries to be better than the one before. We are not perfect, Your Highness. We have never claimed to be. But we try. Every day, we try." Sarana rolled her eyes. "Trying is not the same as succeeding. The galaxy does not give prizes for effort. It rewards strength. It rewards power. It rewards those who can take what they want and hold it." "Perhaps," Daniel said. "But the galaxy is very large, and it has room for many kinds of strength." "Name one kind of strength that humans have," Sarana challenged. "One thing that makes you worthy of standing beside the Valanthy." Daniel looked at her for a long moment. The room had grown quiet. Everyone was listening. "We do not give up," he said finally. "When things are hard, when everything seems impossible, when all hope is lost, we keep going. We fight when we cannot win. We stand when we cannot stand. We do not know how to surrender." Sarana laughed. "That is not strength. That is stupidity." "Perhaps," Daniel said again. "But it has kept us alive this long." The dinner continued, but Sarana found that her appetite had faded. Something about the way Daniel spoke bothered her. He did not argue or defend himself. He simply stated facts as he saw them and let her draw her own conclusions. It was infuriating. After the meal, she walked to the observation deck alone. The stars spread out before her like scattered diamonds on black velvet. She had seen this view 1,000 times, but tonight it seemed different somehow, larger, more full of mysteries. She did not know that her mother stood in the shadows behind her, watching. Empress Kalindra had been watching her daughter all day. She had seen the mockery and the cruelty. She had seen the quiet soldier who refused to react, and she had decided that it was time for Sarana to learn the truth. The message came to Sarana's quarters just before midnight. A servant knocked softly on her door and delivered a small crystal tablet. The words on it were brief and carried the imperial seal. "Come to my private chambers. Now, tell no one." Sarana's heart beat faster as she read her mother's summons. Empress Kalindra rarely called for private meetings, and never at this hour. Something important had happened. Perhaps the negotiations had failed. Perhaps the humans had done something wrong and would be sent away in disgrace. She smiled at that thought as she walked through the quiet corridors of the palace. The Empress's private chambers were located in the oldest part of the palace. The walls here were made of stone that had stood for 2,000 years. Ancient paintings showed scenes from Valanthi history. Great battles. Famous treaties. The rise of an empire that had seemed unstoppable. Empress Kalindra sat in a simple chair near the window. She was over 800 years old, but her silver skin still shone with health, and her violet eyes remained sharp. She wore no crown tonight. Her silver hair hung loose around her shoulders. She looked less like an empress and more like a tired grandmother. "Sit," she said, pointing to a chair across from her. Sarana sat. She waited for her mother to speak. "I have been watching you," Kalindra said. "Over these past few days, I have watched how you treat our guests." Sarana lifted her chin proudly. "I have treated them as they deserve, Mother. They are a weak species with nothing to offer us. I have simply reminded them of their place." "Their place," the Empress repeated the word slowly. "And what place is that?" "Below us, of course. The humans are children compared to us. They have barely learned to walk among the stars. Their bodies are fragile. Their lives are short. They should be grateful that we even allowed them to set foot on our world." Kalindra was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood and walked to a control panel on the wall. She pressed several buttons, and the air in front of them shimmered. A holographic display appeared, showing a star map of a distant sector. "Do you know what this is?" she asked. Sarana studied the map. "The Kethris system. Near our border with the Dravok horde." "Yes, and do you know what happened there 2 years ago?" "There was a battle," Sarana said. "We defeated the Dravok when they tried to attack our colonies. I remember the celebration when news of the victory arrived." "A victory?" The Empress's voice was flat. "Is that what you think happened?" She touched the display, and the image changed. Now it showed ships. Hundreds of ships locked in combat. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers against the darkness of space. The Valanthi fleet was surrounded on all sides by Dravok warships. "This is what really happened at Kethris Reach," Kalindra said. "Our fleet was ambushed. The Dravok had been planning the attack for years. They knew our patrol patterns. They knew our weaknesses. They brought 60,000 warriors against our 300,000 colonists. And the small defense fleet, protecting them." Sarana watched the battle unfold in the hologram. She had never seen anything like it. Valanthi ships were being destroyed one after another. The defense grid around the colonies was failing. "Our shields fell within the first 6 hours," Kalindra continued. "Our flagship was destroyed. Admiral Vex died along with his entire command staff. The remaining ships were scattered and unable to coordinate. The Dravok ground forces began landing on the colonies. But we won," Sarana said. Her voice had lost some of its confidence. "The reports said we won. The reports said what I told them to say." The Empress turned to face her daughter. "I did not want our people to know how close we came to disaster. I did not want them to know that 300,000 Valanthi lives hung by a thread that day. Then how did we survive?" Kalindra touched the display again. The image shifted to show a different part of space. A small group of ships emerged from hyperspace. They were battered and worn. Their hulls showed signs of old damage and quick repairs. "One carrier," the Empress said. 12 frigates, 4,000 soldiers. Sarana leaned forward to look at the ships more closely. Her eyes widened. Those are human ships. Yes. But how did they know? How did they get there so quickly? They received our distress signal, Kalindra said. We had broadcasted across all channels, hoping that any nearby Valanthi patrol would come to our aid. None did. Our own ships were too far away to arrive in time, but the humans had a listening post in a nearby system. They heard our call. The hologram showed the human ships moving toward the battle. They were so small compared to the massive Dravik warships. So fragile. Their commander did not ask for permission from his government, Kalindra continued. There was no time. He made the decision himself. He gathered every ship and every soldier he could find, and he brought them to Kethris Reach. That is madness, Sarana whispered. 4,000 soldiers against 60,000 Dravak? They must have known they could not win. They knew. Then why did they come? The Empress looked at her daughter with eyes that suddenly seemed very old. Because we asked for help. Because there were innocent people dying. Because it was the right thing to do. She paused. They came because that is what humans do. The hologram changed again, showing the human ships engaging the Dravak fleet. They moved with desperate speed, striking at weak points and drawing attention away from the colonies. Explosions marked the deaths of human vessels. But they did not retreat. They did not run. They held the Dravak fleet for 18 hours, Kalindra said. 18 hours while their soldiers fought on the ground to protect our civilians. They knew they were going to die. They fought anyway. Sarana felt something cold settling in her stomach. A feeling she was not used to. A feeling that might have been shame. The quiet soldier, she said slowly. Sergeant Carter. He was there? He led the ground assault personally. He was the first human to set foot on Valanthi soil that day. Not as a guest or diplomat, but as a soldier fighting to save lives that were not his own. The Empress deactivated the hologram. The room fell into shadow, lit only by the stars outside the window. Tomorrow, she said, you will learn what he did that day. You will learn why I have never forgotten. And you will understand why your behavior these past few days has been not just foolish, but shameful. Sarana opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Go back to your quarters, her mother said. Sleep if you can. Tomorrow will be a difficult day for you. Sarana stood on shaking legs. She walked to the door, then stopped and turned back. Mother, she said quietly. How many humans died at Kethris Reach? The Empress was silent for a long moment. 2,107, she said finally. More than half of the force that came to save us. They are buried in a memorial garden on Kethris 3. Their names are carved in stone that will last for 10,000 years. Sarana nodded slowly. She had no more words. She left her mother's chambers and walked back to her own quarters in silence. Sleep did not come that night. The morning sun rose over Valara Prime, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. Sarana had not slept at all. She sat by her window and watched the light spread across the city, thinking about what her mother had told her. 2,000 humans had died to save her people. 2,000 lives cut short so that Valanthi could live. She had spent the last few days mocking them, laughing at their weakness, calling them primitive and worthless. The shame burned in her chest like a hot stone. A servant knocked at her door at the 7th hour, another summons from the Empress. Sarana, dressed in simple clothes, leaving behind her jewels and her fine robes. Somehow, they did not feel appropriate today. Her mother was waiting in the same private chambers as the night before. But this time, she was not alone. Standing beside her was a Valanthi male that Sarana did not recognize. He was old, perhaps 600 years, and walked with a slight limp. A scar ran across the left side of his face, from his forehead to his jaw. This is Commander Talrek, the Empress said. He was in charge of colony defense at Kethris Reach. He survived the battle. He has agreed to tell you what he saw that day. Talrek bowed slightly to the princess. His eyes were heavy with memories. "Your Highness," he said, "what I am about to show you is difficult to watch. But your mother believes you need to see it." "I agree with her." He activated the holographic display. The images that appeared were not the clean, distant shots from the night before. These were recordings from ground cameras, from soldier helmets, from civilian devices. They showed the battle up close. Sarana saw Dravok warriors flooding through the streets of a Valanthi city. They were massive creatures, covered in scales and spines, with claws that could tear through metal. They killed without mercy. Men, women, children, anyone they found. Then she saw the humans arrive. They came from the sky in small landing craft that shook and rattled as enemy fire struck them. Many did not survive the landing. But those who did hit the ground running. They formed lines between the Dravok and the fleeing civilians. They stood their ground against creatures twice their size. "They were so small," Talrek said quietly. "I remember thinking they were insane. The Dravok would kill them in seconds. What could these tiny beings do against such monsters?" The recording showed a group of humans facing a Dravok charge. They fired their weapons without stopping. When one fell, another took their place. They did not run. They did not retreat. They bought time with their lives so that civilians could escape to the shelters. They knew they could not win, Talrek continued. Their commander told them before the battle began. He said that they were not there to win. They were there to hold the line until reinforcements arrived. He told them that every minute they survived was another minute for our people to reach safety. Sarana watched as a human soldier threw herself onto a Dravok warrior, detonating explosives strapped to her chest. The Dravok died, so did the soldier. But the group of Valanthi children behind her survived. "Who was their commander?" Sarana asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Sergeant Daniel Carter," Talrek said. The image changed to show Daniel himself. He looked different in the recording. Younger, but also harder. His face was covered in dirt and blood. His uniform was torn. He carried a weapon in one hand and a communication device in the other, shouting orders to his soldiers while firing at advancing Dravok. He was everywhere that day, Talrek said. Wherever the fighting was worst, he appeared. When a position was about to fall, he reinforced it. When soldiers lost hope, he gave them courage. "I have commanded troops for 400 years, Your Highness. I have never seen anyone fight like that." The recording showed Daniel running through a burning street. Behind him, a group of Valanthi civilians struggled to keep up. Ahead of him, Dravok warriors were closing in. There was a shelter 2 blocks away, Talrek said. If the civilians could reach it, they would survive. But the Dravok were faster. They were going to cut them off. Sarana watched as Daniel stopped running. He turned to face the Dravok alone. He stood in the middle of the street and raised his weapon. He told his soldiers to get the civilians to safety, Talrek said. He told them he would hold the Dravok here. By himself? By himself, the Dravok charged. Daniel fired until his weapon ran out of ammunition. Then he pulled out a smaller gun and kept firing. When that ran out, he drew a knife. He killed 4 of them with that knife, Talrek said. There was wonder in his voice. 4 Dravok warriors. Each one was 3 times his size. He cut them down like they were nothing, but there were too many. A Dravok claw caught Daniel across the back. He fell to his knees. Another blow struck his shoulder. Blood poured from his wounds, but he did not stop. The recording showed him grabbing a fallen Dravok blade and swinging it with both hands. He could barely stand. His body was broken, but he kept fighting. "I arrived with reinforcements just in time," Talrek said. "We drove off the remaining Dravok. When I reached Sergeant Carter, he was still standing. I do not know how. He had lost more blood than a human body should be able to lose. He had broken bones and internal injuries. By all logic, he should have been dead." "What did he say to you?" Sarana asked. Talrek was quiet for a moment. He asked about the civilians. He wanted to know if they had reached the shelter safely. When I told him they had, he smiled. Then he collapsed. The hologram showed human medics rushing to Daniel's side. They worked frantically to stop the bleeding. They loaded him onto a stretcher and carried him away. He was in medical care for 3 months, Talrek said. The human doctors did not think he would survive. Many of his organs had been damaged. His spine was cracked in 2 places. But he lived. He recovered. He returned to duty. Serana stared at the frozen image of Daniel being carried away on the stretcher. The man she had mocked for being weak. The man she had laughed at for not being able to lift a stone. Why? She asked. Why would he do all of this? Why would he nearly die for people he had never met? People from a different species? I asked him that question, the Empress said, speaking for the first time since the recordings began. When he woke up in the medical facility, I went to see him personally. I asked him why he had done what he did. What did he say? He said it was not complicated. He said that when people are in trouble, you help them. When innocent lives are at stake, you protect them. He said that is what soldiers do. That is what humans do. Serana felt tears forming in her eyes. She had never cried before. Not since she was a child. But she could not stop them now. I offered him everything, the Empress continued. Titles, lands, wealth, anything he wanted. Do you know what he asked for? What? He asked me to remember his fallen soldiers. He asked me to make sure their sacrifice was not forgotten. He wanted nothing for himself. Only for his soldiers to be honored. Talrek deactivated the hologram. The room fell into silence. The man you have been mocking, the Empress said slowly, saved 300,000 of our people. He nearly died doing it. And when I invited him here to receive formal recognition, he did not want to come. He said he was not a hero. He said he was just a soldier who did his job. Serana wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Her silver skin felt cold and pale. What have I done? She whispered. You have behaved like a fool, her mother said. There was no anger in her voice, only sadness. But you are young. You can still learn. Tomorrow, at the final ceremony, you will have a chance to make things right. How? The Empress stood and walked to her daughter. She placed a gentle hand on Serana's shoulder. You will kneel before him, she said. Before the entire court. Before the galaxy. You will show him the respect he deserves. Serana looked up at her mother with wide eyes. A princess of the Valanthe has never knelt before an outsider. It is against all tradition. Then it is time for a new tradition, the Empress said. Some things are more important than pride. Daughter. Tomorrow, you will learn that lesson. The Grand Hall of the Imperial Palace had never been so full. Representatives from dozens of worlds had come to witness the signing of the treaty between the Valanthe Empire and the human species. Nobles and diplomats filled every corner. Cameras broadcast the event to billions of viewers across the galaxy. Princess Serana stood in a small room behind the main chamber, looking at herself in a mirror. She had chosen her simplest formal dress. No jewels. No elaborate decorations. Just flowing silver fabric that matched her skin. For the first time in her life, she did not want to stand out. Her hands trembled as she adjusted her hair. She had not eaten since the day before. Her stomach was tied in knots. In a few minutes, she would walk out before the entire galaxy and humble herself in a way that no Valanthe royal had ever done. She was terrified. There was a soft knock at the door. Her elder sister, Crown Princess Valara, entered the room. It is almost time, Valara said. Are you ready? No, Serana admitted. I do not know if I can do this. Valara walked to her sister and took her hands. I have heard what happened at Kethris Reach. Mother told me everything. What you are about to do is the right thing, Serana. It may be the most important thing you ever do, but the entire empire will see. They will think I am weak. They will think you are honest, Valara corrected. They will think you are brave enough to admit when you are wrong. That is not weakness, sister. That is strength. A different kind of strength than we are used to, perhaps, but real strength nonetheless. Sarana squeezed her sister's hands tightly. I was so cruel to him. I laughed at him. I called him worthless. And all the while, he carried the scars of saving our people. Then make it right, Valara said simply. You cannot change the past, but you can change what happens next. The sound of horns announced the beginning of the ceremony. Sarana took a deep breath and walked out into the grand hall. The crowd parted before her as she made her way to the front of the chamber. She could feel thousands of eyes watching her every step. Whispers followed in her wake. Everyone knew something unusual was about to happen. The schedule had been changed at the last minute. The Empress had made a special announcement. At the front of the hall, Empress Kalindra sat on her throne. To her left stood the human delegation, led by Ambassador Holloway. And there, at the back of the group as always, stood Daniel Carter. He looked the same as he had every other day. Calm, quiet. His gray eyes took in the scene around him without showing any emotion. He had no idea what was about to happen. Sarana stopped in the center of the hall. Her heart was beating so hard she thought everyone must be able to hear it. Before we sign the treaty, the Empress announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber, there is something that must be done. My daughter has a statement to make. The crowd fell silent. Every eye turned to Sarana. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Her throat was dry. Her mind was blank. All the things she had planned to say disappeared, like smoke in the wind. Then she looked at Daniel Carter. He was watching her with those quiet gray eyes. There was no anger in them, no judgment, just patience. The same patience he had shown throughout his entire visit. Even when she had been at her worst, she remembered the recording of him standing alone against the Dravok. She remembered him refusing to fall, even as his body was torn apart. She remembered him asking for nothing except for his soldiers to be honored. And suddenly, the words came. I have done a terrible thing, she said. Her voice was steady now. Over these past days, I have mocked and ridiculed a man who deserved only respect. I have called him weak. I have laughed at him. I have treated him as less than worthy. She paused and looked around the hall. Every face was watching her with shock and curiosity. I did this because I did not know the truth. I did not know that this man, Sergeant Daniel Carter, led the soldiers who saved 300,000 Valanthi lives at Kethris Reach. I did not know that he nearly died protecting our people. I did not know that 2,000 humans gave their lives so that our civilization might continue. She turned to face Daniel directly. I was wrong. I was foolish. I was blinded by pride and ignorance. And I am deeply, truly, sorry. The Empress rose from her throne. Her voice rang out across the hall. Sarana, kneel before him. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Diplomats from other worlds leaned forward in disbelief. A Valanthi princess kneeling before an alien? It was unheard of, impossible. But Sarana did not hesitate. She lowered herself to one knee before Daniel Carter. Her silver robes pooled around her on the polished floor. She bowed her head, and her silver hair fell forward to hide her face. Forgive me, she said softly. I did not know what you had done. I did not know what you had sacrificed. I spoke from ignorance, and I caused you dishonor. I am sorry. The hall was absolutely silent. No one moved. No one breathed. Daniel Carter looked down at the kneeling princess for a long moment. Then, slowly, he stepped forward and reached out his hand. Please stand, he said. His voice was gentle. There is nothing to forgive. Sarana looked up at him with surprise in her eyes. How can you say that, after everything I said to you? Because I understood, Daniel said. You did not know. You only saw what was in front of you. A small, weak human who could not lift your stones or match your strength. You were not wrong about those things. I am small. I am weak. By your standards, I am nothing. He helped her to her feet. His hand was rough and calloused, but his grip was surprisingly gentle. But where I come from, he continued. We do not measure a person by the weight they can lift or the years they can live. We measure them by what they do when things are hard, by whether they help others or only themselves, by whether they stand up when it would be easier to stay down. He released her hand and stepped back. You made a mistake. You admitted it. You tried to make it right. Where I come from, that takes more courage than fighting 100 battles. It is easy to be strong when you are winning. It is much harder to be humble when you have been wrong. Sarana stared at him. She had expected many things. Anger, cold acceptance, maybe even scorn. She had not expected kindness. Why? She asked. Why are you not angry with me? Daniel smiled. It was the first time she had seen him smile, and it transformed his weathered face. For a moment, he looked almost young, because anger serves no purpose here, he said. What happened at Kethris Reach is over. The dead cannot be brought back. The only thing that matters now is what we do next. Will we be enemies who remember only insults? Or will we be friends who build something better together? The Empress descended from her throne and walked to stand beside them. She placed one hand on Sarana's shoulder and looked at Daniel with deep respect. Sergeant Carter speaks wisdom, she said. The Valanthy Empire has been proud for 3,000 years. Perhaps too proud. We have looked down on other species because they were different from us, smaller, weaker, shorter-lived. We forgot that strength comes in many forms. She turned to address the crowd. Today, we sign a treaty with the human species. But more than that, we acknowledge a debt that can never be fully repaid. 2,000 humans died to save our people. They asked for nothing in return. They fought and bled and died because it was the right thing to do. She looked back at Daniel. That is a kind of strength the Valanthy had forgotten. Perhaps you can teach us to remember it. Daniel bowed his head slightly. We would be honored, Your Majesty. The treaty was signed that afternoon. The words on the document spoke of trade agreements and mutual defense and diplomatic relations. But everyone who witnessed the ceremony knew that the true treaty had been made, in that moment when a princess knelt before a soldier, and a soldier offered forgiveness. In the years that followed, the alliance between humans and Valanthy grew into one of the strongest in the galaxy. They faced new threats together. They built new wonders together. They learned from each other in ways that neither species could have imagined. And Princess Sarana, who had once mocked humans as weak and worthless, became one of their greatest advocates. She spent the rest of her life working to bring the two species closer together. She never forgot the lesson she learned that day. Strength was not about size or power or how long you lived. Strength was about standing up when you could not stand, fighting when you could not win, helping others when you had nothing to gain. Strength was about being human, and that was something worth kneeling for.